what I'm covering today is not just for teachers from the point of view of parent, anybody who is with children, because the academic side is what most schools, even alternative, are very and revolutionize education. Other than the democratic school, there's just the focus is on academics and how to collect information and academic skills, and a little bit of art, but far from enough. And what we don't teach is how to live a life successfully, powerfully. Instead, we're getting the kids in some kind of a rat race. Even when we do, I see even homeschoolers supposedly off the school system, but there's still a lot of parents, not the unschoolers as much, but most of the homeschoolers, it's still a rat race to the external achievement, the academic, the financial success, versus the ability to live and to thrive as a human being, which is much more difficult than learning even math. I mean, you can learn any skill. And yes, you know, in the arts, music, dance, sports, you have to start early too. But the academics, you can learn them all as an adult. You don't need all these years of doing them in advance. It makes no difference. It just takes childhood years away from you. And we don't focus. And we have also a system that most of the time, even at home, there is a huge stress on grading, evaluating, meaning that we train kids to seek approval, which is the cause of the incredible explosion of anxiety disorders in young people. They're so anxious to please us, to have the right grades, to be the success, even to be financially successful as they grow older. It's too much. And it thwarts their emotional freedom to discover who they are, to be aware of themselves, and to have an emotional resilience. And so we do damage in emotional resilience by praising, grading, evaluating, telling kids to do what we want them to do, which the academics, when we don't need it. So even in the arts, yeah, some things need building skills at early age, but even with that, I teach to avoid grading and to instead inspire the love of the art or the skill or the sport and the connection between human beings above all these ideas of succeeding and getting kudos and prizes and achievements. Also, there is a huge lack of education. I'm going to cover different subjects that we don't educate in and that we should. We are a culture who is devoted to comfort and to having everything we want be at, you know, peak comfort. The temperature is always right. The clothing will cover. The food has to be just right. I have to eat the moment I'm hungry. I shouldn't have an uncomfortable anything. And I see that. I work with families who come to be here with me for a few days. I call it family intensive retreat. They also can talk to me on Zoom like this, and people take sessions. But I just had a family here not long ago from England, and the boy was so committed to comfort, as an example, at 12 and a half years old, that we went, I always take these families on a night walk. I live in a country setting on an island, and the forest here is dark. There's no lights outside, not even on the street. So we go purposefully into the forest to listen to the silence, to experience ourselves not seeing easily, to become aware of different sounds, to be a little bit cold or hot or whatever it is, to be a little bit uncomfortable, but aware of presence. And this boy didn't want to come with us because he said that he heard a lot of frogs in my yard before. The trail actually didn't have frogs, but that noise bothered him. Well, we went without him, but the next day I had a talk with him about that, and that's education, an example of education for expanding your level of being able to be comfortable. And I said to him, if at age 12 and a half, how many things you can't do anymore, missing a beautiful night walk that you already can't do by age 30, how much would you be able to do? Well, that night, I didn't even mention it, and he asked to go for the walk. So it's just a way of introducing. We don't have to be comfortable all the time. We can be cold. We can go and swim in very cold water. I do. We can be with short sleeves in the middle of the winter and take a walk and try that. We can go barefoot on the ground. Nature can teach us so much. The other harm that there is that we do all the time is having expectations, and that's connected to grading and evaluating and praising. So we have expectations about when they should read. We test children already when they're young. And really, it doesn't matter when they read. In fact, I preach that the later is better, because when they don't read or until they read, they rely a lot on and practice a lot remembering. You know, I'm sure all of you sat with a 5-year-old who knows all the books that you read to them by heart and tell you when you make a mistake and they don't even read yet. And they do whole shows. My oldest son knew the roles of all the others in theater, even when he was older, but his memory was phenomenal before he read, and it kept being good because of that experience. But it's not just memory, it's imagination that's not related to the word. And if we read when we are not, when the apparatus is not ready yet, like the eye, the focus, the concept of little symbols meaning something and changing their meaning with direction. You know, when we say somebody is dyslexic, well, just wait 2 years. They know a dog is a dog facing this way or that way. A brain development is needed to distinguish that a letter, a symbol, is not like a dog or a chair, and that changing direction may change what it is. And if it's not quite there yet, then we're premature. But this is, again, just an example. We teach so much academic that can be just left, not even taught at all, and spend the time on how to deal with. So I'm going to go through a list of what it is that we do need to teach. And I'm not saying we have to drop all the academics if the children want them. I don't believe in forcing children to learn anything. But intense emotions is one thing a lot of children have no skill for. And it's not that we need to teach it, we need to stop thwarting it. And again, this is not just for teachers, but for parents, because we start thwarting it when they're babies. The baby cries a little, and I'm all for attachment parenting, hold the baby all the time and respond immediately, and then they don't cry much, that's true. But when they get to the age of wanting things, and they want the candy, and you are going to paint the sky pink for them and bring the candy, you know, in the middle of the night or whatever they want, the broken banana, you go to the supermarket, or parents do. I've had these stories because I have thousands of parents who tell me their stories because the child is so upset. So the parents' fear of the child being upset on the one hand, and then the fear of teachers today to give real grades, and I'm against giving grades in the first place, but if you're doing it, you know, today it's this everybody wins, and yeah, I'm all for non-competitiveness, but if you're going to be competitive, don't pretend that it isn't, and don't give the child the message you can't handle not being the winner, so we say that everybody wins. So they need experience of failure as much as they need the experience of success. And the success shouldn't be praised, and the failure shouldn't be saying something negative about, because failures are the greatest learning stepping stones. We need to fail. We need to acknowledge this didn't work. We don't have to call it a failure. That word actually has no meaning. It's never a failure, like Edison said. It's another way we know this doesn't work, which puts us forward toward what works. We need to teach relationships. Again, I'm not talking about a class necessarily, or some of that can be in a class, dealing and talking and sharing, more like a group therapy session. But how do we do relationship? We have kids coming today out of free school or, in the democratic school, and in homeschooling, there's a lot more chance to practice relationships. But in most schools, it's a dictatorial. There is a teacher and there is kids of the same age being told what to do. And that's what they learn. You have to boss each other. And that's not relationship. And then they grow up, they fall in love, or they have friends and they mess it up because they don't know how to relate, or they fall apart when relationships fall apart because they can't handle, they're not resilient. And they're not resilient because we compensate or try to avoid all triggering, trigger warning. Oh no, nobody should suffer, nobody should be hurt. But we need to teach them that a hurt, an emotional hurt, is part of the path. We all suffer. We all have hurts. And to also teach them to own their hurts. Nobody can trigger me, only I can. That's a lesson that even adults don't know, because we have learned to be victims. We have learned he did it to me. He made me feel. She makes me feel. Nobody can make us feel, and we need to learn that. And the modeling usually at home is not that. The modeling is, oh, who to blame? Who did this? The parent will come into the room where the children are playing and one of them is crying and blaming someone, and then the parent is angry at the one who supposedly did the harm, teaching the one child to be a victim and get rescued, and that being a victim is a good thing because you get mommy to come over or daddy to come over or the teacher to come over and punish or be angry at or get in trouble the other child. And that's how we teach victimhood, blame, which when I'm a victim, I'm weak. That's not emotional resilience. That's emotional wimpiness. That's emotional dependency. That's emotional disability. We become powerless people, helpless, who depend on whether the other person said the right word or not. And I teach parents and children that no matter what another person says, I am the source of what I feel about myself. So I can even freely be interested in what they're saying and finding the truth in what they're saying without feeling offended, without feeling hurt. In fact, one of the main things we need to teach is how to not be defensive, how to not think. But you see, the reason kids today and adults are so weak in terms of being able to accept criticism is that they're taught that they must be perfect all the time. Oh, no, you're good, you're good. No, you're not stupid. But when another family was here with me and one child called his sister stupid, I immediately said, me too. I'm stupid, and I gave them an example. What I taught them by that is don't be afraid of being called stupid. Find where it's true for you. I always say if there is a word in the dictionary of a quality of a human being, I have it. So if you call me something, if I can't find it on the spot, I'll work on it. I'm sure it's there. So I say thank you and I accept it. And these kids, they stopped fighting and started sharing how they are stupid. They wanted to show me that they're more stupid. They competed with me. So it became a laughter therapy because everybody, no, and I did this and I did this and mine is more stupid. And another game that I use as an education for resilience is I sit children and adults together in a circle, could be in a family, could be at school, and we throw pillow at each other, calling each other's bad names. It can be some good ones after a while, but we start with easy bad names like you're stinky or, whatever they call, the kids get very strong very fast, but as the adults, I start something gentle. And when I say to somebody, I throw the pillow and I say, you're stinky, they always have to do the same thing. They have to say thank you, because hey, we thank the person for seeing us and seeing something about us we may not see. And then they say, I can find it, and give an example. It could be 20 years ago, the example. It could be 5 minutes ago, I vomited and it stunk, or I burped, or I farted, whatever it is, like, being free or sweated. Yesterday I ran and I was so sweaty and stinky. So to allow relationship, to teach relationship in terms of communication and in terms of not being defensive and in terms of not seeking anyone's approval. And this is one of the biggest things that we're missing in almost all our schools. And we're not teaching it, we're teaching to seek approval. We're teaching to depend on praise. We're teaching to depend on getting the good grade and being so perfect. So life is unpredictable. We need children to not always be predictable and know in advance what would happen. And being powerful is not seeking approval, and therefore not being defensive, and be free of triggers. I have no buttons. Who can trigger me? They're all good with me. Call me whatever you want. Call me stupid, call me arrogant, call me controlling, call me generous, call me whatever you want. Why would it hurt if I can always find it? If not now, then I'll keep looking. Or maybe it happened a long time ago. So self-reliance is the opposite of seeking approval. And self-reliance is strength. And it starts with attachment parenting. Parents say, if my child sleeps with me, won't they be dependent? I say, no, they will be independent, because they're learning how I feel inside is honored, which means I can trust me. So you're teaching self-reliance starting already at babyhood. But in schooling and education, we often do the other way. Like, you're happy when you've been praised in front of the class. One child raises their hand and gives the wrong answer. The other child is so happy because now they can give the right one and impressed. In fact, they wish the other child said the wrong answer, which is how most schools teach bad social skills: competitive, hate, wanting the other one to fail, etc. So how do we teach the opposite? How do we teach not only emotional resilience and lack of triggers and communication skills, but actually wanting to connect with others and wanting the good for the other, being happy that the other succeeded? And how to deal with anxiety is a huge one. University professors today say now that they've never had such level of anxiety. This generation is out of control. Everybody is depressed and anxious, and everybody is running for what their parents started them in kindergarten, going for being the success story, pleasing their parents. And then when they can't, when they come into real life and fall on their face, because you can't always, and then they feel victims or they feel disabled, then they get depression, they get anxiety if they don't get A or A+. So inner peace is another aspect of emotional resilience. Can I be at peace with failing? Can I be at peace with whatever happens? Can I be at peace with my boyfriend or girlfriend leaving me or not liking me? Can I be at peace with my friend saying something bad about me? My teenager then, now 31 years old, when he was 15 or 14, he came home one day and he said, today, my best friend and these two other girls, they told me that I'm CC and gay. He's not, but he's very intellectual and skinny and soft and loves classical music. So they labeled him and not him. And I said, how did you feel? And he said, nothing. It's like, it didn't do anything to him. Because when a kid grows up knowing I am who I am, if these people see something else or see in me something, fine. So I teach to actually say he wasn't that developed at that time, but I teach when somebody tells you something critical, I teach to say Naomi's magic words. Tell me more about it. So when kids say to their parents, I hate you, tell me more about it. If they say to a teacher, I hate you, tell me more. What do you hate the most? What is the worst thing I've ever done? Learn from it and let them speak and let them self-express, which is the first chapter in my book, the most important, freedom of self-expression. Can we absolutely not only allow, but embrace and support children saying what they need to say and what they feel? Let them create power, let them create sadness, let them create joy, let them include everything so they don't need to be in such fear, and let them be exuberant. Because one of the things that we do a lot is teachers and parents will tell me, this child is getting away with, whatever they're doing. What does it mean getting away? If an adult did freely everything they do, they would be great success. And we would say, wow, he has a lot of stamina and he's going for it. And yet when a child breaks something apart because they want to learn what's going on there, we go, no, you don't do it. And we constantly suppress their exuberance and their enthusiasm for learning. I'm not saying to let them do something that's unsafe or that's going to be really destructive, but you don't want to thwart their exuberance. There is no getting away with. They're not trying to be against us. They need the freedom. So there is freedom, not license. They can learn boundaries and limits in a way that isn't oppressive to them. It's not about us being their boss and controlling them. It's about being on their side. There's an article of mine called "You Are Your Child's Lawyer." It's about being their lawyer, not their teacher's lawyer, not the other kid's lawyer, not the other adults in the playground's lawyer, but your child's lawyer. And I have some examples in the book about how to do that. So then the other thing we need to teach that we don't teach at all is physical health, nature, healthy eating. Children grow up in schools and go to universities where they feed them junk, and nobody teaches them anything about what's healthy, what's not healthy, what's food, what's junk, what sugar does to them. Being out in nature, allowing discomfort, like I said before, allowing suffering, dealing and talking about death, birth. My children all, except for the first one, of course, but he and then the other two were present to the birth of their own child. And I succeeded. I was teaching some birth classes, so they even were present to other children's birth, other child's birth once. And my oldest son, we talk about death, and he got so interested, we went to a hospice where people were taken care of on their last days or weeks of life, and he wanted to volunteer there. And they told him, you can only volunteer if you take the same workshop that the adults who volunteer take. And in a month, there is another workshop, a 3 days workshop. He said, I'll take it. He took the workshop. He was 10 years old, the only kid in the program. And he learned the whole thing, was enthusiastic about it, said he's not afraid of death. And he was so curious about it. And then he volunteered. He said he wanted to volunteer until he is being with someone in the last few hours before they die. So after he did that, he was satisfied. He said, I don't have to do it anymore. I got the experience I was looking for. So the summary of all of this is self-reliance and how we quench it instead of helping it. We need self-reliance, non-defense, non-seeking approval human being. By the way, the non-seeking approval includes not fitting in. So many teachers and parents tell me, how do I help this kid to fit in? Don't. Why should he fit in? Why be like everybody else? Let them experience that being who they are, they don't need to be like others. Fitting in, it's just, what, you want to teach them to be sheep, to be like everybody else, to seek the approval? It's all connected to that. So no, you don't need to fit in. You need to be yourself and contribute to society. How are you in a way that's enjoyable for others, or teach them something new, or just be yourself? Maybe you're a shy kid who just likes to observe others and not fit in or make a big noise like I used to be, believe it or not. I know it's not believable right now, but obviously. But it's like, be yourself. And it's like one of my kids said as a teenager, if they don't like me for who I am, they don't have to be my friends. It's fine. I'd rather have friends, people who like me for all my quirkiness. This was my most quirky kid who said that. So he knows, and self-awareness, knowing who you are, what you can contribute, and loving yourself, not conditional love. If I get the good grade, if I perform well in the concert or in the dance or the sport. So that's about it. And don't be the boss is another thing. We live in a society. I said that's it, and I'm going on, but that's me. So we are bossing children. Most schools, other than that's this organization is the big one that says we need an alternative. But even a lot of the alternative schools are still bossing children around. You take Waldorf school, it's still teacher dictator, nicer content, but teacher dictator, kids of same age. Doesn't work. Kids of same age, it's like putting the blind with the blind. They can't help each other, and then they're set up to compete with each other, and that's really killing of relationship on of social skills. So we need to let children live in real society with all ages and have them stay in touch and rooted in themselves as they choose to contribute, to grow, and to learn what they want, when they want, and I don't care at what age they want to learn it. There is no rush with any of the skills and learning, except for some of those. And even that, the music. I have 2 musicians for kids, and they started early because they wanted to, not because I forced it. But there are, Rubinstein started at age 27, I think. I'll double check that. Maybe it's a legend, but that's what I remember. But there are people who start late, dance or things that require skill, and show us that the starting at young age is probably not a necessity. Maybe it's a necessity in things that require strong flexibility and physical abilities. Anyway, so self-reliance, no defense, no seeking approval. I open it to you for your question. What I want to do is then Judy, you're gonna open, whoever is ready with a question, or read to me if somebody, I prefer no texting. It just takes longer. You have to read it first, to choose, and then, so let's just be together in the room. We're not too many to be able to do that. So anybody has a question? And Judy will open you up, I guess, or you can, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself.
I have a question. My name is Annette. So I'm a former teacher. Now I work with parents and kids individually. And one of the things, I love your book, by the way.
Thank you.
Raising Your Children, Raising Yourselves. One of the things that I've come to recognize, so I'm the youngest in birth order of 9 children, and my mom was very much, so I have that angle, but I also understand that kids need that breathing space. But something that, a pattern I know, or I've observed, is parents view that attachment parenting through the lens of letting the kid completely do whatever they want. And there's not that container where they feel safe, where the boundaries are, oh, I'm going to have you, oh, we're going to stop there because I'm showing you I love you, and it's more of a kind of a fear thing. I feel like that the kids are acting out from their parent, the mirroring. Um, do you have anything to say about that? Like the child is sensing that the parent's too fearful to, I don't want to break them and stop them, their creativity or whatever. And then of course, on top of that, like I mentioned in the chat, there's this fear, like you were mentioning, of the child failing. And then when they do actually have that opportunity, they completely lose it.
Right, right. So yeah, exactly. And those two things are connected. Yeah, I think what happened, historically speaking, is that the reaction, we had 50 or 100 years of no breastfeeding, no sleeping together in Western society. And then Dr. Mendelssohn came and Attachment Parenting International started, the La Leche League, and we went back. And I think as human beings, we tend, when we go back to something that we think is much better, we overdo it for a while. That's human, and you're absolutely right on that. So we're overdoing it, and parents are so afraid to hurt the child, and so thinking that the child should never cry and never have any pain and never anything go wrong. And then at the same time, they can't handle, the parents can't handle when the child fails, so they don't give them healthy opportunities to fail and to fall. And absolutely, I work with parents about this all the time. Like, let them fall, don't intervene, and right away run and rescue them. So some of my examples are with my own kid, and they learn from that. I remember my baby, the last one, walking and falling at 1 year old. And, a lot of parents would run, oh no, and I say nothing. He looks up at me from the floor like, what am I supposed to feel? And I smile at him, and he gets up and keep walking. Or another one of my children at age around 2 riding a tricycle, and I look through the window here, he's on the porch, and he fell and the tricycle fell on him. I don't even go there. I wait and see. He did scream initially, but still he looks around, he looks at himself, he gets up, he gets back on the tricycle. That's education for resilience. And this kid now climbs mountains and does 20 some miles in one day on very little sleep. And he says, I don't understand why I can't find anybody to do it with me. Everybody wants to be so comfortable and everything perfect. I don't take much and I just go. So there's the ability or to get bad grades or to all the examples I gave before. So yeah, parents do tend to do that. They start with babyhood. A baby is uncomfortable with something. Yeah, we solve the comfort with breastfeed on demand, we sleep together, all of that. But sometimes they need to cry, or sometimes they fall and scrape their knee. You don't have to compensate or to give them the message that something horrible happened and that we have to get away from the feeling. And here, have some chocolate. Here is something to jingle in front of you. You're uncomfortable. I'll make you, have fun. So we do it in so many subtle ways. Does that answer your question?
Well, because my follow-up question is, isn't it in some cases in the families that I've worked with, it's not even the child's angst, it's the parents.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so then we perpetuate it with, I really have noticed it.
Why don't you give me a specific example? It's all, I was thinking that I'm also talking about the parent is anxious that the child wouldn't cry. The parent is anxious that the child would hurt themselves. So maybe you talk about preventing them from experiencing stuff because something could happen. Can you give an example?
Oh, I thought you meant that you were trying to answer both the parent and the child in the same, with the same response, and that's what I understood. Is that
Yeah,
what
the parent anxiety creates what they do with children in all these examples I was talking about.
So how do you go about, I mean, I don't come right out of the chute, because that's usually what people come to me for, is their child's really intense behaviors. Some people you can say that right away, but I mean, for maybe the rest of the people that are here, how would a teacher or program person approach that, because I also do like consciousness work with people or energetic work with them, so it's they can kind of come to it on their own. They kind of have that realization of, I was protecting my child, and really it's their own, maybe there's some of them their own trauma from childhood that they didn't realize. So our
Right.
children are so much our teachers.
Yeah, so why don't you give an example of a specific event, and I will address it the way I address it in a private session.
So, for example, a parent contacted me today with a 3-year-old that I work with her other kids too, but she said, "Oh, suddenly since we've moved into this new house, she no longer wants to go outside by herself, and she used to, in our other house that was always she just went outside and she was fine, and she didn't need someone right there with her, and now apparently she's having this problem." And I already know how I would approach it, but that's kind of what I'm saying, is that in a school setting, I mean, that's what people are coming to me for, but in a school setting, how might a teacher, administrator, whoever running the program deal or approach a child's anxiety when it really, I mean, that was something that they were kind of almost taught
Yeah,
by their
so here is what I like to do, and it may match or not match, but I like to give the child the opportunity, to give them the power to choose to go outside in this case, not by forcing them, by totally respecting them. So let's say all the kids go outside and this child doesn't, he's going to be alone inside, and he's going to face himself either way. I would validate their feelings, and I would try to hit on what's going on for them. If you know the child well, I'll give you an example from something else, like a child in my yard, this family that was here a year ago, fell and scraped the knee a little bit, nothing serious, and burst out crying, also at 3 years old. That's why I'm giving it as an example. And I said to the child, because he kept screaming, it was obvious there was nothing serious going on. And I said to the child, are you screaming? I didn't say, are you screaming? Are you thinking about how the moment that you fell, are you remembering the moment that you fell and how scary it was? And he looked at me and he stopped crying right away, because he realized, yes, I was thinking about the past. So I'm thinking a child who has something going on about being outside, you say, are you remembering being outside in some place you don't know? Can you, and you let them tell you about it. The more they hit on the head, what is the emotional pain, and we're not forcing them, but we're getting them in touch with themselves, so that, again, rooted inside, the more they will step out at their own time and then be self-reliant and trusting themselves and knowing that we understand them. So it hits so many good teaching skills as a teacher or a parent, is that you're also teaching them connection, because you're listening to them, you're connecting with them, you're asking questions, you're the one asking, tell me more, what's going on, is it this, is it that? And you listen to them. Maybe they want to draw a picture about it. Maybe you notice, maybe there have been something more traumatic. Maybe the newness or experience of newness. Are you remembering being in new places, being scary? Tell me about it. When they're little, sometimes they need a doll in order to tell you, like show me on the doll, or just play dolls with them and they'll tell you without being told what to tell, or draw me a picture. I know children who like to draw when they had some fear, a series of pictures, and to tell you what's going on over and over again. So you ask and you go through the pictures or through the doll play, and it's amazing. Then they, of their own, just change their mind eventually, because you empowered them, you allowed them to come back to themselves, to the place in them that knows, I can go outside, because they processed the fear. Okay, anybody else? Did people write questions? I saw texts coming in.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's, maybe Judy can help me with that. I'm so bad at checking the.
Hi. Okay, if you open up the chat box, you'll see if
I
there's
have the
questions.
chat box is open.
Do you want me to read them to you?
I thought maybe you can read them one by one and I'll just answer them. We'll go as many as we can. Maybe go
Okay.
for shorter ones so we don't spend too much time.
Okay, someone says, I'm a former elementary teacher and now work with kids and parents one-on-one, and so many parents bend over backwards so their kids do not have disappointments. I've observed that some adults do not know how to approach situations when their child experiences lack of success. This is part of the human experience and builds resilience and perseverance. I think that's a comment more than a question.
The comment, yeah, and it reinforces what I said. So, but in terms of what I do with it when a child is disappointed, is you just validate the feelings without drama. And what I mean by without drama is don't read the child's feeling. They actually mostly feel shamed and insulted by that. So it's not like, oh, bummer, you feel so sad because grandma ended up not coming for a visit. But it's about acknowledging the facts, letting them be the author of the feelings. So if you say you wanted grandma to come so badly, tell me more would work with that too. What were you going to do with her? I know you really wanted to do all of that. And then, of course, if there is a place for reassurance, she will come in a month. She's not feeling well, or the weather, or the flight was canceled, or whatever, and she will be coming. Let's sit together. It's fine. And to talk when there is some makeup. It's not that you have to hide it and insist on suffering, but it's just about validating and listening, asking and validating without drama, without reading emotions, but with facts. The fact is she didn't come. You really wanted her to come. You want to tell me, you want to draw, you want to show me, whatever. Let them talk, let them express. Okay, read the next one.
Hey,
Can I ask a question?
oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
You don't mind. I loved your talk. I think you're absolutely brilliant and fascinating. I'm going to buy your book. Really opened my mind to thinking about things from different perspectives, which I really appreciate. So thank you very much for that. One of the comments that I really agreed with was the importance of not just trying to fit in some sort of like conformist, like, or pressurized way. Yet on the other hand, belonging is a basic human need. In your view, your experience, how do you think we best help support the cultivation of belonging?
Well, belonging and fitting in are not contradiction to each other.
Right.
In fact, it's the other way around, because fitting in is not authentic. It's like being like everybody else and doing the same thing. It contradicts belonging. So they don't contradict each other, the opposite. Belonging is what happens when you don't try to fit in. And remember what I said before, that when I talk to a kid who wants to fit in, or to a parent usually who is worried about the child fitting in, I say what you need to do is, how would you contribute? Who are you inside? Not fitting in as in being like everybody else and accepted, but as what is your unique way of being, unique contribution. And sometimes it's just your shyness. That's why I always want to be careful saying that, because I don't mean that everybody else has to join in and play a song for everybody and be a contribution in some artistic or psychological way. There are those that, and also true for adults, whose contribution is being the receiver, sitting there and appreciating the one who sang the song, or the one who threw the ball, or said, let's play, and organized the game. So it's the accent on belonging. I love that you brought that word, because belonging is so much better than fitting in. But it still has a little bit of, I think people hear it a little bit as fitting in. Belonging is something that you don't have to create. It's who you are. We are a social animal. So the moment you are in society, whether alone at home or in a big theater, giving something, being on stage, you are a contribution and you do belong. You can't not belong, but fit
Well, I mean,
in.
people feel excluded in groups all the time, though. I mean, we have all sorts of, like, I mean, racism. There's so many billions of examples in human society of us not being authentically inclusive and loving difference enough to be able to allow for people to be their full selves or feel like they can. So,
Right.
in your view, how important is it for the group to sort of cohere around like norms as part of that process, or do you really feel it just emerges?
Well, my experience is that it emerges when kids are free and authentic. I don't feel afraid of, and this is what we heard before about parents and teachers' anxiety about the children. So what I hear is a little bit anxiety about the child who is excluded. So I love that you brought that up, because I'm going to give you a story that is precisely about empowering that when somebody is excluded. Because I repeat this story often, it happens more than once in my own home, with families being here or in public places when kids play and the parents are in the workshop. And a child would come out pouting, they won't play with me. They send me out here in the house. There was a time there was like 7 children, and one girl came out, they won't play with me, they asked me to leave. And my response to the child is, so what would you like to do instead? So instead of teaching her to feel bad, to feel excluded, I'm teaching her to love reality. So that's what happened to you today. It's nothing wrong. It doesn't mean you don't belong in society. It just means today, at this moment, this group doesn't want to play with you. I'll play with you. And if I see that the child is very emotionally already was taught to feel bad, then I validate the feeling first. I ask her to tell me, if she wants to tell me what happened and how she's feeling and how much she was looking forward to play with these friends and now she can't. And then I empower her to choose something else. And if she's not my kid and she wanted to go back home, I said, would you like me to call your mother and she'll pick you up? Would you like me to sit and read you a book? Would you like to help me in the garden? I'm doing some gardening. Maybe you want to help me. So I teach the power of choosing what is, embracing reality rather than blaming something bad was done to me, which is the nature of being hurt and feeling excluded. So you nailed it. I really am grateful that you brought that up. It's a beautiful example of how we teach the weakness and the victimhood instead of the empowerment and the resilience. Resilience is facing what happens and loving it. That's what to love next, that you don't get to play with your friends today.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Hi, Naomi. I have to go. So
Okay.
Stephanie is going to read you the questions from the chat box, but I just want to say thank you. It was a great talk.
It's much easier than me getting the glasses on and bending it.
Okay, Stephanie, take it away. Bye.
I'm lucky that I have one pair of glasses that will let me see the screen and the questions. There was a question a while ago about suggestions for how to support teens who are low on resilience. So that might be a nice follow-up. Yes.
So teens who are low on resilience, that means all of those things that I was talking about happened to them. And this is one of my greatest successes. In fact, the family who just was here with a teen, not the last one, but one before. And it was amazing what happened to this teen. And it's not any different than everything about all ages, except that teens are so intelligent and so able to be vulnerable if you open it for them. They may have learned not to be vulnerable, to be defensive and therefore weak. And when you start allowing it, when you start talking, I find one of the best ways is to talk about yourself and talk about yourself as a teenager, how vulnerable you were, how much you failed, how your friends didn't like you, or this, if you can have an actual embarrassment story. The biggest fear of a teenager is embarrassment, shame. And that, telling them about it, if they come to you with that shame already, this and that happened to them, to help them talk about it and to help them. What I do with the teenagers, I do the work like the work of Byron Katie? How many of you, just raise your hand if you're familiar? Okay, so a few of you, good, a good amount. So I do with teenagers the work. I do it with young children too, and with parents. I find it's phenomenal because they totally get it. So I had this teenager who had an entanglement with a parent where he needed to be loyal to the mother and then therefore push away the father. And in order to be loyal to the mother, he wanted to stay baby. He wanted to stay needy. And sometimes all they need, and the example is not exactly what you're talking about, but it's relate in the fact that of how you cure it, if you can call it that, is that all they need is enlightened witness, as what Alice Miller calls it, somebody who tells them the truth. So all I did was calling it the truth. After getting close to the family and knowing the kid enough and talking to them and listening to them, what do you hate about your father? He said, I hate the father because he insisted I go to school rather than homeschool. He wanted to keep homeschooling to possess his mother, also away from his sister who did go to school. And I listen, and I see all these limitations, and then I say, here is what I see. And I said it eventually when I knew he was ready in the most blunt way. In fact, we demonstrated to him we made, so to speak, fun out of some of what he does, but only when he was really ready and when he was already imitating himself. He was doing, we talk about it, and I would mention something, the truth, and he would go into his act with his mother, acting it stronger and showing it. So there is something really magical with the teenagers. They are willing to hear the truth. It sets them free. Here is an adult who is not buying my nonsense. Here is an adult who is not buying my shtick that I must have good grades. And then I free them, and that's the good grades thing. A lot of these kids are the best students, and they think that they can't survive life unless they keep being the best and the top. And they're in greater trouble than any of the bad behaving wild kids who disturb the teacher and don't do their homework and skip school. Those kids I know are connected to themselves, but the goody-goody, I call them, who do all the right thing, and the parents will call me and talk about the aggressive, wild child they have, and I ask them about the other child, and they would say, oh no, that my teenager, he always been the best student and a good kid, and I have no problem with him. And I said, let's talk about him, because that's the one that's the problem. Your little kid, I'll teach you how to allow the exuberance and find where you're not meeting the need, where maybe he needs more movement or whatever it is. But your older one, your teenager, is shriveling in the need to appease and to succeed and to please you, because that's where usually they are stuck. So it's also, you must also talk to the parents, because the parents must stop putting that pressure. And some parents you cannot. If you're working with the kids, then you only can empower the kids. And you empower them, you don't tell them your parents is wrong or anything like that. This kid that I said was here that said, he said, I don't talk to my father. He wants me to go to school and he doesn't care about me. And it was all out of loyalty to his mother. And within, they come here for 5 days usually. And within a short time, what I do is tell them how fantastic their parent is, because they all are. They're loving parents, even if they do the wrong thing. I said, well, your father may be right or wrong about sending you to school, but he loves you. He misses you. He wants to be with you, and you're, defying him or avoiding him and avoiding the connection in order to be loyal to your mother. He completely transformed in one day. Once it was clear to him, the next day he said, I want to go to boarding school, which we thought was too much. He said, okay, boarding schools, we look for a democratic boarding school in their area in England, and there wasn't any. So I said, look, unless it's a democratic school, all the others are more strict than any regular school. Let's look at some other alternatives. And you can go maybe to school or find lots of programs, or running start if there is something like that in English, where you go to college and take classes, whatever it is. But the kid shifted and completely let go of the victim mentality of being the shadow of his mother, the loyal to his mother, and all his fears vanished. Like first he said he couldn't go to school, he's afraid they'll bully him, this, that, and all of a sudden all he wanted is to go to school. He was just the last 2 days, 2.5 days, he was on the computer looking for alternative schools, for other schools in their area in England. So, you know, they shift really fast. Who shifts slow are the parents. The teenagers are usually, if they don't shift fast, then I do more emotional work with them. A lot of the work of Byron Katie takes care of almost everything.
Wow, I wish my parents had been able to talk to you when I was a goody-goody teenager. The next question in the chat was, how do you support a teen that quits something they love because they feel unskilled at it when they have not yet enough experience to be skilled or to feel skilled?
So is there somebody specific in mind?
This is from Derek. Are you still there, Derek? Do you want to jump in? There he is.
Yeah, it's always more helpful with the questions if they're not generic. It makes it also more interesting, but also more specific.
Oh,
So Derek here?
I saw him a moment ago. There he is. Derek, we're not hearing you.
So unmute yourself.
Yeah,
his audio tends to be spotty. So you know, it's a little bit difficult for him, I think. Not to speak for you, Derek, but
you might try.
Maybe you can type your example if you can't be heard.
There was a little bit more of a discussion. Let me just see if there was a discussion in the chat about it. No, it didn't go into details of that. So Derek, you've now muted yourself. Maybe just try turning your video off and unmute, and we might be able to hear you. Unfortunately, we're still not hearing you.
Okay.
So I'll let you go ahead and put the example in the chat.
Yeah.
I haven't been.
He pointed that he put the example in the chat, or that he is putting.
Okay. If anybody, I'm just reading through the chat to see if there's more questions. If anybody wants to jump in with a question, go ahead. Like a
but I think
verbal.
Didn't he finish writing the example?
Oh, maybe here. Let me go down to the bottom.
Yeah. Scroll and see, because.
So, okay, he says, I have tons of examples, but it happens often with writing. My kids have great ideas, but they balk at writing about them.
Okay, and how old are the kids? Make it with fingers, if we don't hear you. Derek, can you tell us the ages of the kids? Or type it in, or put fingers out, because it makes a difference. Because with reading, I don't recommend to read at a young age.
Yeah.
And also, I suspect I like to cure the cause rather than just deal with the symptom. When children think that they're not good enough at something, that means that the way they have been taught was with everything I explained in the beginning that doesn't work. Because it was taught with expectations, with evaluation, with the idea that they have to achieve something and that they shouldn't, you know, fail. A lot of children who are homeschooled, for example, who learn to read when parents aren't pushing reading, they learn to read anywhere from age 4 to age 14. And a week later, the age 14 and the age 4 are as good at reading. It doesn't matter when you learn, just like it doesn't matter if you walk at 1 or at 2, or if you speak at 2, or like Einstein at 4. Before you speak the first word. And one of my children didn't speak till 3, but then spoke 2 languages with no baby talk at all. So you don't know what they're figuring out, you know, out. So I suspect that children who feel like they're not skillful enough are, need a different teacher, first of all. Whoever is teaching them is getting them hung up on having to succeed, to achieve something. Because if you have nothing to achieve, then you're reading today at the rate that you're reading today. And are they learning to read because they want to, or because somebody designed it for them? So those are the important questions. Because once they're into the belief that they have to be good at something according to an external standard of teachers or parents and expectations, it's very hard unless you totally let go of that. And I find that sometimes with kids like that, you have to let them quit and start again if they're really driven, if it's really their wish, at a later time and this time with a teacher and parents who are putting no pressure. So I'll give you an example with two of my kids were musical prodigies and started lessons because they wanted them. But I never suggested that they would take lessons, never. They messed around on piano and, on their own. And then we went to a concert, and after the concert, they came and told me they want a violin lessons, cello lesson, clarinet lesson, 3 kids, different things. And I purposefully didn't call teachers, didn't do anything. I wanted them to nag at least 3 times the way they nag to go play or to have a candy or whatever. So the second day, Mommy, did you call a teacher? I said, oh, I didn't yet. I'm sorry. Yeah, I will do it. And I still didn't do it on purpose. I wanted to be sure they're not pleasing me. I'm a musician too. Not professional, but I play piano and sing quite well. That's how, it's in the family. And the same the third day. Mommy, did you? I said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. By the 4th day, I called teachers. And then I told the kids, there are few teachers who are going to test. You decide who you like and who you want to study with. And then at any time you can quit. I tell them that in front. At any time you can tell me I need to switch teachers. And they needed to switch teachers every 2 years, one of them. Because he was so advanced so fast, he would be done with a teacher, need to move to the next one. So he went to some of the best teachers, the best cellists in the world eventually. But it was all his initiative. And the other one quit a few times altogether because he wasn't a practicer. It wasn't his thing. He's an improviser and a composer and following strict rules of the teachers. And I told him, I take you to the teacher, I write notes. You're responsible to be ready for each lesson and move on. The moment you don't want to do it, it's fine. You can just quit. And that's the only way that kids will do what they actually want to do. Even then, they could be caught in their own talent. My youngest said to me at one point, I can't quit, even if I wanted to, because now that I'm so involved and already playing concerts and solos at age 10, it's just but he's not sorry that he kept himself going, that he had that. This year he's playing principal cello of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and he's regularly assistant principal, and he's only 27 years old. He got into the orchestra at age 20, which was like a big hoo-ha, the youngest member ever. So anyway, so I think why they are this way is what needs to be addressed, and then give it time and find another venue if they get interested again, or talk about it and listen, because then you learn what the problem is and help them erase the need to please anyone or to live to anybody's standards, up to anybody's standards.
Thank you. It looks like Derek left and is trying to come back in, so he might be seeking admittance, but there's also 3 other people with questions.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
Back
okay.
in.
Great.
Yeah, but Alicia had the question.
Yeah, so there's Alicia, then Liz, then Sian. So maybe we can, I know we have about 7 minutes left.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be fast questions and answers. Go ahead, Alicia.
Oh, thanks. I thought we were going to do Derek. I don't know. Mine might be a little long, but I just want to say I agree with everything 1000%, Naomi. I'm so glad I finally got to meet you. My kids were only went to Sudbury School. Like for 25 years, I've been saying all these same things that you're saying, and now I see like the results when they're young adults. Like you were saying, like all three of them have long-term relationships, and they're so great with their partners. They're so great with their friends. They're like so much emotionally smarter than I was. Probably still am. And so I like, my question is, I mean, yeah, I've been talking to people about this stuff for like many, many years and doing it. And like I attachment parented twins, which is like a lot harder than having one kid. Like, you know, I figured it out and all that stuff. And like, so then I just went back and got my master's in education because I kind of wanted to find out what was going on in the like real world of education, even though I pushed that aside a long time ago.
It's very unreal.
Exactly. Exactly. So like, and even when my kids were little and I was letting them do stuff like walk on a log across a creek or wander around at age 3, like people almost like called the, you know, services on me for being a bad parent, right? So when you let your kid experience real life, that's what a lot of people think is you're neglecting them, right? So my question is, the focus in education and parenting right now is so not on this, especially in education. It's all on testing and assessing and this and that. And it just, the kids don't know who they are. The whole reason I got into this was because I was like that A student, and it took me forever to figure out who I was and what I was interested in and what I was good at. And I just swore that my kids wouldn't have that same experience, and they didn't. And so like, I feel good they did it.
Let's get to your question.
The question is, what is the bridge conversation to bring these values into wider acceptance?
It's what we're doing here. It's the conversation that I just demonstrated. And when you talk to people one-on-one, you usually can't do it other than by asking questions. And I found that, you know, when I was young and I just started working, I was very zealotsy and trying to preach to parents, even in private settings, playground, school, whatever. I stopped that very quickly because it creates defense, because everybody was raised the way I just said not to raise children. So everybody's defending their position, their precious, precious convictions, fitting in and wanting to impress and the whole thing. So I stopped doing that. And what I do instead is, if, you know, offer help that demonstrates what I do, or ask questions. So if the conversation comes up, I would ask a person, how was it for you as a kid? Sometimes they say it was wonderful and I think I turned out great, so I'm going to keep doing the same, and you leave them. This is not the one, you know, we can only change the people that are ready to change. So there's no point wasting time on somebody who isn't. But some people, you tell them, well, how was school for you? Was it the love of your life every morning? You just loved being told what to do in school or at home? And if they're honest and halfway present, they would start getting answers that they preach themselves. You don't have to. And maybe then they ask you questions, or you can tell them, you know, that's how I feel too. Or, you know, I didn't like school and I see my children flourishing this way. Would you like some information about it? There are speakers and writers that I know that provide, you know, books, videos, whatever. And I can share with you if you're interested, but only if they're interested. Usually they're not. So move on. It's just like what they teach in salesmanship. You know, don't waste time on the non-buyer, right? Move on to the next one and you'll have a lot more sales. So this is not about selling, but it is about enrolling and passing people. But you have to connect with them. You have to touch them emotionally in order for them to understand. And if it's parents, you know, how is your child doing? Do they love school? Do they come back from school, just can't wait? Do they, you know, the democratic school, the kids don't like vacations and don't like weekends. They can't wait to get back in school. So it's something you can share, something not as a way to dig, but maybe as a question. How much does your child, you know, like school? You know, maybe it's too hard for them. Maybe they need some different environment. Would you like to discuss that? And if they are not, next. And
Next one is Liz.
yes. So we have what, just 3 more minutes.
So what I noticed is that I don't think there's another session after this one, so we could potentially stay in this room for a few more minutes if you have time, Naomi.
Oh, good. Yes, I do.
Naomi, I love everything you said. Absolutely everything you said. It resonates with me on 100 levels. I'm going to try to be concise here. So I was a high school teacher. I was a what we refer to as a rebellious or responsible subversive high school teacher, trying to create the environment that you're talking about. I also had 3 children of my own who were all very different. So much of what you said has resonated and brought back wonderful memories, etc., etc. The one question, so I definitely need to have a conversation with you afterwards and maybe even hire you to talk to my granddaughter who thinks she's not very good at math. And I'm working on it, but I'm only here for a few more weeks and then I'm away again. But anyway, the one thing I think, you know, because I think you should be a keynote next year at AERO. I definitely think that would be a good idea.
Tell
And
the management of
I will.
AERO.
I will, but maybe we all should, and then we'll definitely have Naomi next year as a keynote. Secondly, the one thing that hasn't really come up, and I don't even know if it needs to, so I'm sorry if I'm taking you off track or whatever, because you're bang on with everything. But because I was a high school teacher, and because, you know, I had 3 children of my own, it's all well and good if somebody has someone like you in their life, or maybe a responsible subversive like me, but a student who has gone through the system most of their life and basically is fucked up, right? You know, and maybe to the point of some serious mental health issues, dependencies, suicidal, etc. So that's when I think maybe it's necessary to step in and be a little more assertive and, no, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, to keep you alive and safe. And then later we'll transition back to you having more autonomy. Can you speak to that a little bit?
You know, I don't quite understand what you just said. Take me through that ending part, through your question.
Okay. So I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, I got all the, just the last part.
I have a student, say, who is 17 years old.
Right.
Is inflicting horrible harm on himself, either through drugs or other kinds of addictions, or, you know, suicidal thoughts, right?
Mhm.
So normally, yes, you allow the natural consequences of actions to take place,
Yeah,
but
yeah, of course.
it could be fatal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does somebody like you or me or whoever intervene at that point?
Well, first of all, I want to say none of us can take responsibility if things are really extreme. I work with teenagers and succeed to bring them back to life. They're obviously at that emotional place because of believing thoughts that are not true. They're believing that they failed, they believe they didn't please their parents, and all the shebang that we talked about for an hour and a bit. So if we can talk to them, then yeah, I'm a good one. I would talk to them, I'll do the work with them, I'll let them find out and discover who they really are. So my goal is for them to get in touch with who they are, not and relinquish believing all the stories who they're supposed to be and why they're no good or why they failed. Or so I work with them, and I work with their parents because the parents are contributing or contributed to where they are right now in the first place. But I just want to add a word of caution: if somebody is actually suicidal, to not hesitate to intervene, whether it's taking them to a hospital or even giving them, and I'm not for drugs, but sometime a tranquilizer temporarily just to get them out of that state, or just never leaving them alone. Whatever you need to do while discussing, touching, and each teenager is different. Some of them need a physical touch in order to even get in touch with themselves. Oh, this is who I am. And some of them need to just spend a lot of time just being, or being silent, or meditation before they would talk. I'm good at getting them to talk because they trust me very fast, because they see I'm on their child. Remember, children grow up. By the time they're teenagers, society was not on their side the whole time if they grew up in a normal way. Their parents tell them to be other than who they are. Stop doing that and stop doing that, and don't hurt your sister, and don't do this and do this, and be good at this, and you don't have a good enough grade. Then they go to school, the same thing, bunch of adults bossing them around, telling them what to do from morning to evening if it's a regular school. So the damage is severe, and they're, like I said before about teenagers, they are ready to heal if somebody opens the door and tell them all of that is not true. You don't need to please anyone. You don't need good grades. You don't need to please even your parents. You need to be you. And creating a connection where the you, the part of them being themselves, actually is expressed. That would be my goal. And, you know, with me, it goes very fast. I have teenagers who didn't speak to their parents and are, I'm not saying anything and I don't know what I feel, etc. And within a short time, they're just like splashing open. and then, yeah, maybe then they totally don't need it anymore. And the other factor that's very important is diet. I'm very strong on natural factors, be in the sun, physical activity, and stop feeding these kids junk. And a lot of them, with the junk mind, they got junk food as well. That often, you know, the schools are giving horrible food, and then the pressure, the learning to do, fit in, and all of that means I eat what my friends eat, as if that's a holy cow. So they're eating junk, they're eating sugar, they're getting addicted to all kinds of stuff. They start drinking. I mean, it's just, there's so many factors to address. So just get connected. But if there's an urgent need, then either be there the whole time or even use tranquilizer. Or I know one family, they didn't ask me, they told me after the event, but they took their son to the hospital. The only problem in America taking kids to psychiatric hospital ward is getting them out of there is really difficult. So I don't recommend that in a hurry. If you can do something else, if you can calm them down with good food, you know, the kind of food that people eat today, even when it's not junk food, that enhances, to my knowledge, emotional issues is too much fruit and plant food. There is a big hoo-ha about vegan, but a lot of plant food has a lot of toxins because plants are designed to have stuff to save them from being eaten. And different bodies are not so good with it. While if you let the animal digest the vegetables and you eat the animal product, we don't have those reactions. But the main part in terms of food is really to avoid sugar and too much carbs. Often too much fruit makes them very emotional too, even if it's natural carbs and natural sugar, it's still a lot of sugar. And avoiding fruit juices, which are unnatural amount of sugar without all the enzymes and fiber to digest it, and it comes into the blood also too extreme. And then there is sleep and sun. So there's also include the physical things, like take them on a hike, take them on camping, where they're in nature with people that they love the most, whether it's family members, friends, and you, as well. But the connection is the main thing. You know, listen, and be on their side. I think one reason parents, you know, the teenager won't talk to them and say, I don't know, or I can talk to you, is that we didn't give them the feeling that it's safe to express anything. They should feel safe to say, I hate you. They should feel safe to say, I feel horrible. I want to kill people. I want to kill my brother, you know, or if they're jealous or whatever, or my friend who bullied me, or they should be able to speak completely freely. And that's where the healing is, and do the work. The 4 questions and turnaround again is very, very helpful. But sometimes they don't want to do it. You just have to use something like a tranquilizer to just get them to even relate to you in the extreme cases.
Do you have time for Sian's question before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I have time. I have, 3 more hours before my next
I was,
Zoom meeting.
thank you. I was
You
actually
shouldn't
just
have said that,
typing to
Naomi.
say,
No, 3 hours
Thank
is a
you.
lot. I can even go swimming in the ocean and refresh myself.
I'm going swimming in the ocean. I was just typing to say that I have to go, so I'm going to be quick. Thank you so much. I have really appreciated your insight. And the question I had was about a specific student I have that has always been a high achiever, has always gotten straight A's, model kid type, the same kid that you said we should worry about. And he is, I would like to give him the space to not be that, but I don't really know what I can do to say, hey, you can let some of that go if you need to.
How old?
And
old?
he's 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And he's comes from an environment where he's definitely loved and supported, but the expectation is already laid. Do you know what I mean?
and you are his teacher in school?
Yes, I am his teacher in school.
Yeah. You know, it's a hard one, especially that you're not the parent, but the teacher. But the best thing in principle is to give him opportunities to fail. Actually give him an assignment that he's not going to be successful at, and that you set it in advance as, or maybe a few of them together, so it's not just him. And let them do something that is not going to turn out good, and say in advance, you know, this is about the process. It doesn't matter how it turns out.
Okay.
And do a lot of those. Give opportunity. Give the classroom maybe as a whole or groups. Come to some projects in the community, or projects, you know, whether it's gardening or working with kids who are, you know, being on the giving side. Volunteering with something that one knows is not going to work very well.
Yes.
Because I'm just worried that with how his family is the main cause that he's such an achiever. I mean, at some point you can also try what I said, teenagers are open, talk to them, to talk to him about, you know, you're so good at everything. I worry about you. How would you handle something that you're not good at? It's really to also not be good at stuff. So being open, but maybe creating first, and even talking maybe to the whole class, not about him, how important it is to fail, to not always have the good grades. Probably some other kids would benefit from that. You know, we need to do in life what we enjoy from inside, rather than because of being paid or because
I agree.
of a grade.
Right.
That's, you know, we're programmed to get the payoff rather than enjoy. You enjoy piano, then play piano. But if you're
Intrinsic
just
reward.
playing the piano in order to be paid or impress someone, that's no fun.
Right.
So yeah, talk about it.
Thank
in
you.
Class. Yeah.
I like that a lot. Thank you. I'm definitely
Good.
going to try that and talk to the person. That's always been my rule. When in doubt, talk to the person. So if it comes to that, I will. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for all your contributions. It was a great talk.
Thank you.
I have to go. Thank you.
And this talk is like a breakthrough, a shaking the paradigm we're in. So yeah, you're all messengers. Please pass the word. Please send people to work with me, but just you yourself start noticing these things, and you're all working with kids, I assume, with teachers, parents, and start breaking that horrible mold of hierarchy and control and bossing children and shaping them instead of allowing them to flourish. I always say you water the flower so it'll grow, not if it will grow. So our job is to water the flower, not to decide what color or what shape or when the petals will open. At the same time, I want to be clear that I'm not talking about license. I'm not talking about some unschooling people the kid can do, or what one of you said before, the parents are anxious, they should get whatever they want. No, they don't have to get whatever they want. That's not real life either. But you don't have to manipulate their autonomous direction. Let them encounter real life. Real life is, they say you're closing the swimming pool, we have to get out of the water. The child doesn't want to get out of the water. I say to the guard to tell them instead of me. You know, it's like encounter real life. Or one of my kids at 2 and 3 years old used to go from table to table to talk to people and tell them all about the dinosaurs that he read about. And people said to me, well, why don't you interrupt him? Isn't he disturbing them? I said, he's encountering life. Those who have a romantic dinner and don't want him, tell him off. And if they're too shy to do that, oh, well, they can take sessions with me. I'll help them. but until then, so he's encountering shy people, and you know, I'm not there to supervise them and save them from their issue, nor to save him. It's like he's going out in the world and he's talking to people, and some tell him and some don't tell him and some enjoy it, and that's life. So we really need to shift paradigm from one of control and shaping children and teaching them and thinking that they need to know all these academics, and start focusing on nurturing who they are and allowing them to be rooted in themselves. All right, thank you for being here. Thank you for your open heart and open mind. And I hope to see you again in some capacity.
Thank you so much, Naomi.
You're welcome.
Do you have time for another question?
After I did the ending?
You said you had 3 hours. I was just
No, I didn't mean that I can stay.
I didn't mean that to be here for 3 hours. I just wondered if you had.
I meant that I have 3 hours to do my other things.
Other things.
Yeah, so maybe we should say goodbye at this point.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.